Okay. I recorded an entire podcast. I did it on my phone because I want to sit on my couch. And the sound quality was terrible because I didn't hook up my microphone. So we're going to re-record it in a much more condensed way, a better way, one that doesn't get me canceled from the internet and from life for what I said. So no, you will not get to hear that gem of a podcast. But this has the same message, and it's going to say it better and tighter so we can all go back to what we're doing, which is probably just watching my videos on Instagram. Just kidding. All right. I did a whole episode called Jews Just Love Sadness. I think it was the second or third of the season. And is this a new season? How do I decide when I make a new season versus just having like a 700 episode first season? Should I just go on with one season forever? I don't know. All right. Anyway, staying focused here. I did an episode called Jews Just Love Sadness. And the root of that whole episode was that I couldn't understand why is it that the only things that inspire us are these major world life events, these life-altering, we overcame something huge. Someone was born with a disability or, God forbid, was sick and they overcame it or they were resilient. All of these things that every Yom Kippur speech or every whatever, everyone always had to dig down and reach into their bucket of sadness to get people inspired. And the reason I had a problem with that is because I felt like all of those inspirations were either fleeting because they only lasted while you were hearing them, or because they really were not applicable to the common man or woman or a child, right? These are things that you typically, God forbid, don't wish on anyone. Life is set up in a way where, for the most part, if life goes well, you don't experience those things. Most people are not, Winston Churchill or, surviving a concentration camp or whatever else. Now, while that was a great episode, if I might say so myself, what does that mean if I might say so myself? I already said it. What do you mean I might say? Whatever. Okay. I never got to the root of why I cared so much to make that an episode, why that concept bothered me so much. And I never really understood why it works. But it's the root of my entire social media existence. It's why I wanted to do this. It explains it all. And it just hit me recently. So hear me out. Imagine you were whale watching. I don't know if you've ever been whale watching. Usually you do it in the Pacific. You go around, you go boating for a while, and you just hope that you get to see a couple whales jumping out of the water or coming out, right? A great day of whale watching is if you see a couple whales or a school of whales or whatever they're called when there's a lot of whales, and you see them. And what are they really doing, right? There's a whole ocean filled with whales and fish and all sorts of stuff. And all you're really asking for is that while you're touring around and you made this whole special trip, that at least one comes up and out of the water and you get to see it. So you go, oh, there's a whale. I saw a whale. That was exciting, right? And that excites you. And you're like, wow, we had a great day of whale watching. We saw 3 different whales. It was awesome. If you have ever gone whale watching and you don't see any whales, you're like, that was a terrible day. Now, you did the same exact thing, right? You sailed on a boat the whole day. You're in the area where the whales are. But if one didn't pop his head out for 1 second, you're like, that was a huge waste of a day, right? Does that change in either scenario, whether there were whales underwater, whether there were fish underwater, whether there was coral reef underwater? Did that change any of it? Or does it just mean that hold on, someone messaged me. They're supposed to come for an appointment and they're running late, which is even better because now I could talk to you for longer. Does that mean that the whales and all that stuff underwater didn't exist the day that you went whale watching and you didn't see them? No, it just means they didn't pop out. And when they do pop out, you feel amazing. You feel like something happened. And I realized that people are inspired by miracles and they're inspired by extreme circumstances. Now, in life, thank God, if life is whale watching, most people never see any whales. And when they do, people are there for them. And when they overcome, they feel like they overcame something great. Those are the random occasions when the whales actually come out. But that never changes that throughout life, there's whales and fish and reef and everything else underwater happening right underneath their noses. They just don't have their heads in the water. They don't have goggles and a scuba tank. They can't see what's going on. And because of that, if you see a whale one time on your whale watching trip, it could feel really good. But a week later, a month later, a year later, you forgot about the whale. You're not even cognizant. You're not aware of the fact that, like, you know, if you think about it, that there's whales, sure. But you're not living your life based on the whales, right? Also, your life's not being affected by whether or not the whales come out of the water or not, whether they're there or not, because what happens in the ocean really doesn't affect us here so much. But if underwater was all of the spiritual realms, if underwater was everything that happens behind the scenes when you do a mitzvah, or when you learn Torah, or when the world was created, or when you were created, or underwater is you understanding God's existence, that would have a real effect on your life as a Jewish person. Because now your actions of why you do any of this stuff are very different. They're all affected by that, right? Anyone who's religious, who does anything, does it either because they were trained to, which are most of those people who are living uninspired. Those people have heard that there's an ocean and that there's a whole life underwater and that there's whales. And if they're ever lucky, one day in their life, they'll get to see a whale pop out. They'll get to see a revealed miracle. But those people, even though they acknowledge the existence, they never look. They're fine to keep doing their stuff the same way, regardless of not getting to see the whales. And those people live pretty miserable, inspirational lives. And what I mean by that is they could have good lives, but there's no drive, there's no fire, right? A lot of the people grew up that way. It is what it is. It's what they know. They don't feel everything that goes on underneath and how it affects them. So, but then there are people who legitimately go and stick their heads underwater. Or Hashem puts them on a whale watching trip and a whale comes up. And those people get to be miraculous, and those people get to be on Meaningful Minute, and Meaningful Minute talks about what happened when the whale popped up, and now they feel really, really good at what they accomplished or what they achieved. And sometimes it's something sad, but they get to see the benefit of it, or how they were resilient through it, or how Hashem took care of them through the difficulties. Those are the one-off whale watching incidents where you get lucky and the whale pops up and you get to see that there's a whale under there. But then there are the people who actually choose to become marine biologists. And if what's underwater affects your daily life, which with whales it doesn't, for the most part, but if everything underwater was what happens spiritually in your Jewish life and how you were created and how the world was created and how Hashem exists, how he makes everything happen, you would see that nature is actually everything that happens under the water, whether you see it happening or not. And if we were all marine biologists and we all had goggles and scuba gear and could go underwater and see everything that was going on, we wouldn't need the whales to jump out on whale watching trips for us to be like, wow, look at those whales. We would know what's going on the entire time. Now, that doesn't mean that your head has to be underwater the whole time, because if your head's underwater for 1 second and you get a picture of it, you get a slight glimpse. That's something that's kind of hard to forget, right? Like I just went snorkeling in the Caribbean and it was pretty crazy because you can literally see everything that's underwater and you're like, wow, I almost forgot that it all exists. But if I went snorkeling every day, even for a minute, 30 seconds, or I went snorkeling once a week or once a month, the more I snorkeled, the more I would be able to recognize and be aware of what's going on underwater without me ever having to do that. And the more I understood that in my brain, where my eyes of my brain were able to see based on my understanding, I could have my eyes closed and still see the whales and the fish and everything else underwater. It wouldn't change the fact, my eyes being closed wouldn't change the fact that all of those things exist and I'm well aware of them. And if those things affected me, if those things were causes of my effects or effects of my cause, if when I did a mitzvah, a fish was born and I could see that happening underwater, or if as all the fish were created, the way they came about because I saw how they were born, then then that would change things for me, right? That would change what I want to do and why I want to do it. Now, all of this whole fish whale analogy is to talk about one thing. It's to talk about Chassidus. Chassidus makes you into a marine biologist. And the more Chassidus you learn, the more you see it even with your eyes closed. And once you do, you can no longer live in the world without being aware of the ocean and what happens in it. And the more you study, the more you know, the more you see it in everything. The reason this is all so important is because everyone who's living uninspired hasn't looked deep into the ocean yet. And therefore, they require revealed miracles. They require to be on the whale watching boat and for a whale to pop out so they can see the whale. And that might be super inspirational for them at that time. But after a while, it's fleeting and it goes away. So they have to see some sort of amazing, Hashem has to change nature for them, where the whale jumps out and you get to see it exactly at the time when you're there, a one-off instance, in order to be inspired, to be remembered of the ocean. Because what is inspiration Jewishly? It's that drive where your neshama wakes up and says, wow, there's Hashem, I have to do something about it. But the people who become marine biologists, every single thing for them is a revealed miracle. The fact that all of existence exists because Hashem is saying it should exist every single second, the same way he did in the time of creation, that's miraculous. I have trained myself for 30 years to look at the world as if my head is underwater with goggles. I can see what's going on based on my learning. Every single thing that happens to me, I see as supernatural. I don't need revealed miracles because all of existence is a revealed miracle. And when you live like that, when your brain can see what your eyes don't even need to see because your brain understands, every single thing becomes inspirational in your life. The reason I can learn something from everything, and lots of other people who have studied Chassidus look at the world the same way, this is not specific to me, is because we have had our heads underwater for 1 minute a day, for 10 minutes a day, for 1 hour a month, for whatever it is, we decided to immerse ourselves in that and give ourselves a clear understanding. Now, that doesn't mean that I know every single fish and what's under every rock and what every reef looks like. The ocean is vast, and so is the Torah. The Torah is an infinite ocean, but it gives life to all of these creatures to exist, including us and including this world. And the more we see the inner depths, the more everything becomes a miracle, even ordinary existence. The more you realize that nature is nothing but a disguise, and everything that happens in nature is because Hashem is making it happen miraculously every single second. The reason I'm saying this and why this is so important is because most people have come to me and said, I am very happy to live above water. I have this great world. Before you showed me what's underwater, my life was just great. There was regular Torah for 1,000,000 years. There was the yeshiva system who doesn't care about Chassidus. Why do you think you're better than us? Why do you think that your Chassidus, this new thing that the Baal Shem Tov brought around, that all these rabbis had continued after, these righteous people after the Baal Shem Tov have continued? Why do I need that? The Torah was fine. The Jews were fine before all of that. And to that I say, if you don't need the underwater and your actions and thoughts and speech are all in line with what Hashem wants all the time, then you can be inspired by the dry land. And while you are selling yourself short by not seeing what's underwater, because really that's behind every single thing that you see on dry land, And if you want to look at what Chassidus is versus not, everything that everyone learns on the surface, halacha, Mishnah, Gemara, Rambam, whatever you want to look at, can be looked at through the lens of Chassidus. Because once you've had your head underwater enough and you become a marine biologist, then everything on the land starts to look different. All of the Torah that you look at starts to look different. It's no longer just the palm tree that you used to see. It's a four-dimensional palm tree. And you can see the inner energy behind that palm tree as it originated underwater. You can see the spiritual matter behind things simply because your brain understands it. And so if you think you don't need Chassidus, or if you're just bored of your Judaism, if you have to wait for revealed miracles to inspire you, or some story of great resilience, and without meaningful minute you can't survive or can't feel inspired, ask yourself why. Ask yourself if you're ignoring the inner dimension of Torah. Ask yourself if you're just waiting to go whale watching in hopes of seeing some whale, or maybe you just happen to be on a boat going from one place to another and you weren't even looking for whales, and a whale popped up and great, that inspired you. But how do you create that over and over and over again? If you want every single second of every single day to be inspiring, if you want it to motivate you, you have to learn Chassidus, and that is the bottom line.